All you need is one person in your life who says, "You got this, I believe in you," and you will find courage and energy to do things that you would not have had before. But more importantly, that person needs to also say, "And if everything goes wrong, I will be there for you, and I will be there with you, and I will be in the mud with you," and has the ability to say, "Something's wrong, I'm worried about you." And I think burnout happens when you're attempting to do all of the things you see other people do and not realize that they have deep, meaningful relationships that you can't see. And you think, falsely, that you have to do it alone. And that's when burnout happens, because you don't, as an individual, have the energy. But in community and in relationship and in friendship, it's remarkable, including knowing when to just take a little break to recharge.
Good afternoon and welcome to Carpe Diem, our version of Office Hours today. It's so important, if you're in the job market, to seize the moment, to seize the advantage. This is one of the toughest job markets I've seen in my career that spans back in executive search almost 30 years. In my healthcare career, which goes back almost 44 years, it is certainly the case. This is a tough market. This requires a special set of skills and grit and resilience to survive. There are thousands and thousands of competent executives on the sidelines because they got caught up in mergers, they got caught up in the pandemic furloughs, they got caught up in consolidation, and now they're trying to get back into the marketplace. And CEOs have realized they can do more with less. And so this requires a tough go if you're in the job market. Even if you've been successful in the past, this will require every bit of focus and determination and grit and resilience to get a new job. Hello, I'm John Self. I'm the founder and chief content officer for johngself.com. Earlier in my life, before I got into healthcare, I was an editor, crime writer, and investigative reporter. I finished my career in Houston for the Houston Post, where I was the crime writer for the overnight edition and an investigative journalist. At Herman Hospital, where I became the director of public relations, I was asked to take the lead and implement the nation's second helicopter ambulance program, cooperating with the infamous Dr. Red Duke, an incredible legend in healthcare in Texas, and a great team of people. We were able to implement a successful program. Matter of fact, we were so successful that the aircraft company asked me to join them as their national marketing manager. And for the next 3 years, I traveled extensively, setting up another 13 or 14 programs nationally. I also built the second largest network of rural and community hospitals in the 80s when DRGs were changing diagnostic-related groupings, and those changes hit the reimbursement of rural communities very, very hard. And we showed them how to compete more effectively and how to use their cash-driven assets to their advantage. In global recruiting, I worked in 6 countries on 4 continents. I've interviewed more than 1,000 executives, so I know a little bit about how the process works and what you have to do to be successful, not only in communicating your value, but at the interview table, how to sell yourself. I've interviewed more than 9,000 executives. Today, I'm an executive career coach. I've taught the interview course for the American College of Healthcare Executives, a global organization, for more than 10 years. So I have the resources, the insight, and the information to help you in these tough times. With thousands of capable executives out of work and flooding the market to find a new job, I think the hardest job in America is finding another management role. That's not what most people want to hear, but that's the reality today. When searching for a job, you have to understand one thing that's different today. You can't sit back and hope and wait. Hope is not a job search strategy. So you cannot, even if you've been really successful and you are comfortable with your credentials and you're comfortable with your talent and you've been lauded for your past performance, if you're out of work today, it is a tough slog to find a new deal. And you can't sit back and wait. You have to aggressively execute a job search strategy that emphasizes how you can benefit the employer. This is not about going in and sitting for an interview and answering questions. This is about engaging with the prospective employer and showing them how you can solve their problem. One of the things I've noticed frequently in recruiting and later as a job search coach is that when people lose their job, even if they've got reasonable reserves in the background to help them through the initial period, there is a sense of panic that sets in. I got to find a job. I can't not work. I mean, I don't want to miss a paycheck. I need to keep flooding my retirement account. Well, that's not going to happen. And unless you're a real senior executive or you've gotten just a real generous board that'll give you a great severance, the average severance now is running about 180 days. It's 90 days if you're a manager. And if you're an executive, it's not going to take you 3 to 6 months to find a job. Today, it's going to take anywhere from 6 to 14 months based on the demand and the number of jobs that have diminished and the huge demand. So be prepared for a really tough slog. You may get lucky, but then you can also get struck by lightning. Let me tell you what it's all about. People just they finish they go through their severance discussions, they sign the documents, and then it's like, oh my God, I got to do something. I got to be someplace. I've got to go somewhere. And they're moving everywhere. It's crazy. It's like this traffic scene in this metropolitan area. Plus, you have people that are demanding your time. You know, you've got school to pay, you've got tuition, you've got utility bills, food for the family. And it's really tough. And everybody's saying, you got to get the job, you got to keep moving. That creates panic. Well, that's understandable. We've all been there. I've been there. But what I will tell you today, based on my experience in this market, and tracking the developments with automation and how talent acquisition is changing, today's job search market requires that you have a laser focus. I mean, a laser focus. Without a written plan, you risk getting bogged down with dead-end, time-wasting opportunities. I've seen it happen over and over again. It's like these executives who chose a ladder and they started up and then they realized this ladder is not going to get them where they need to be. And so now you have to jump between ladders if you can. The best way is to be very intentional, do your homework, have a plan, and don't waste time chasing rabbit holes. So let's focus on what you need to focus on. First of all, you start off by understanding your value. If you don't understand your value, you can't communicate effectively with a prospective employer. Again, this is no longer a job search where you're just answering questions. Your resume has to sell your value. Your interactions at every level of the organization you have to sell your value. And if you don't understand that value, if you've never really sat down and focused it, then you are going to be in big trouble. So you want to develop a value brand statement based on your 4 or 5 signature strengths and a set of examples of why those are signature strengths. And this is going to be like a political stump speech for you when you're out talking to people about your job search. When someone asks you, tell us a little bit about yourself, they're not asking for you to recount every nook and cranny of your resume. that will absolutely turn off the employer unless they specifically ask you to, quote, walk them through the resume. Don't make that mistake. I had a great CEO. He was a top performer, but he hadn't been in the job market forever, and he really just assumed that because he was so valuable and so successful in his previous organization that he knew the right thing. Now, I was a recruiter for a hospital in Arkansas, and he came in and he was so engaging and nice, and then they asked him to tell the board a little bit about himself, and he droned on for about 18 to 19 minutes. He lost the board after about 4 or 5. Later, they said that they were so impressed with his resume, but that if he didn't improve his performance with the medical staff the next day to show that he could stay focused, he would probably be out. The next day, he added about 10 minutes to that presentation. It was almost like we were sitting through War and Peace. I'm not going to mention his name because he's a superb leader and a really great guy, but he just didn't understand how the job market had changed. He had not been in the market almost 5 to 7 years. And so he was really relying on his experiences from those earlier days. Well, everything has changed. Now you need to create a written plan of your, not just for your job search, but for your career. You need to have longer term goals so that you can say, okay, the job I'm looking for will support these goals. That's really important. And you have to be sure that you're using the latest, best job search tactics, okay? You're going to be dealing at some level with, automation. Even if you get a letter from a recruiter, an email from a recruiter that says, we've identified you as a potential candidate for this opportunity. Would you mind submitting your resume? You cannot submit a generic resume. You have to go through the document that they sent you, the email, and really look for key phrases of how they're framing the job and what they're looking for to be sure that your resume specifically addresses those issues. It's really, really important that you do that. And if you don't have that in your job search tactics, you will lose out. Why? Because you're now being sourced by automated computers using algorithms on LinkedIn. Corporations are taking more of the executive recruiting inside. Even search firms are using this now, where they can go scan through thousands of LinkedIn profiles and get the top 100 candidates based on an algorithm and the LinkedIn profile. So that tells you that you better have a really good LinkedIn profile that really focuses on your signature strengths, your value proposition. And then you have to understand that when you get that letter, this is not like in the old days with somebody in a Rolodex calling around to find out if you're interested in a job. That when you submit the resume to that URL link that they've established in the resume, you are submitting it to a computer with AI automation. And if you don't have a customized resume that really focuses on that job, if you're not ticking off 80 to 90% of the keywords and phrases, you probably will not be selected, even though they really express top interest in you in that letter. You need to focus on your targeted companies and regions. When you get laid off, this is an opportunity to sit down and say, okay, I would like, if I'm in Houston or if I'm in Chicago or if I'm in Dallas, you might be able to stay within the same market depending on your industry. Some industries like healthcare are now extremely tough. And although healthcare is adding lots of jobs, healthcare is not adding a lot of executive and management jobs. So you have to be prepared to look elsewhere. So sit down with your family. I know they're not going to want to move. As a recruiter, I've dealt with families who had teenage daughters or teenage sons. And, sometimes you just almost have to live apart for a year to go through the transition. But let me tell you something. You can make it an adventure. And if you're traveling, you're still going to miss a lot of your family's activities. So try to keep, it's just a tough nut to crack. It's a tough issue to deal with. And I've seen families go through all the emotional, cathartic, changes because the breadwinner in the family lost the job and now they must move to a new location. So sit down with your family and say, okay, where would we like to live? We all enjoy skiing. Mountain West, okay, the Northwest, so we can be closer to skiing and outdoor activities? Or do we like the more sophisticated lifestyle of a big city? How about the Chicago area or some of the other great cities of America? This gives you a chance to stop look at what you're doing, look at where you're living, look at what's important in your life, and plan your future. And then you're in doing that, you need to be sure that you're going into an area where there are organizations where you have a reasonable chance of getting employed. If you have companies you've admired in your industry or CEOs that you've met at conferences, you need to get on the phone and start talking to those people. They may not remember you very well, so you might want to send them an explanatory interview explaining what's going on, and just say, could I arrange a 10-minute phone call with you? And when you have those 10-minute phone calls, you need to be focused on what you're trying to accomplish. You need to be focused on your messaging and what you're looking for and what your skills are. Now, once you sit down and you decide, okay, these are the areas in the country we want to live in, the Northwest, the Upper Midwest, the Southeast, then you need to start say, okay, do I have networking contacts in those areas that could support the targeted companies that I've identified? If you don't, you have to start building that network very quickly on the fly. Now, you may not be able to find a lot of relationships. It may take longer to build the relationships, but what you want to do is try to find people that you can get introduced to, somebody who knows somebody. It's a great way to put it. Where you might interview with you might talk to a Baxter marketing representative in your market if you're in healthcare to say, who do you know, or who can I talk to in your company in the Atlanta market? Or the Columbia market in South Carolina, or the Charlotte market, or the Miami market. So you draw on on the resources you have, whether you're in healthcare or communications or retail. You know people who are representatives, who are marketing, who work for companies that you do business with that may work in those markets. You want to try to find resources that you can be introduced to look for that job. So this is not sitting back and waiting. You have to really be aggressive. Now, the one thing you do want to try to avoid, you will end up making some online applications, but you need to avoid these magnets because they can be really time wasting. Scatter shooting is rarely helpful. Shooting at a lot of different jobs. Oh, well, that's not exactly what I want, but it's close, and I'm going to try and see if something works out. Okay, you spend an hour and a half doing that, and let me tell you something, it rarely works out. Because you see all these jobs online, and let me tell you something, what is hot is not necessarily, what is hot is not, to be honest with you. Why? Because there's a lot of companies that have old jobs up that basically are ghost. They don't really exist anymore. Companies have really cut back, and they leave those things up there for whatever reason. Some HR person had a divine intervention and decided that was a good idea. I don't think so, but maybe they know something I don't. Now, what you really need to do is establish also a daily work plan with key performance indicators with accountability, KPIs. You have to hold yourself accountable. And if you don't, if you say, well, I'm going to go play golf today, or I'm going to go to the Starbucks and read and kind of relax this afternoon and get caught up. Well, that's important. You need to take that time. But the road to hell is paved with good intentions. You have to understand you're going to have to spend 4 to 6 hours, at least 4.5 days a week in your office working to build that. If you're not really churning like that, if you're not really making connections, if you're not making phone calls, and I know you don't want a cold call, but this is a different market. You have to. I mean, you can't get around it. Connecting with somebody on LinkedIn and having this sort of, LinkedIn direct message relationship building, that's important to get started, but eventually you have to have virtual coffees together, or you meet them in person. That's what it's going to take. And you're always trying to find out who they know that might be able to help, and then you always offer your resources to them as well, because networking is really not about you. It's about helping the other person. And when you do it that way, I guarantee you the benefits will be outstanding for you in the future. The secret to success in this market is focusing your plan and hard work. You can't really, as a senior level executive or even an aspiring manager, you're not going to be able to advance your career based on online submissions. You can't depend on the slot machine to guarantee your employment, your retirement for the future. One of the things that happens are people. One of the things that happens to people, then it's now been 4 months. I'm not making any progress. I got to do something, and so they start hitting all the buttons. They go, oh, this one looks good. Well, what about that one? I think I'll try that red one next. And oh, the blue one's good. I'll go back to that because there were some good things in that. You have to be disciplined. If you're not disciplined, you're going to have your career. It's going to look like a beach ball. Everybody else is punching it around. Do you want this kind of approach to career management? It can have, believe me, some disastrous implications. If you depend on people like this to help you with your career, I guarantee you're not going to like the result. You need to build contacts that you can depend on. Don't allow other people to run your career into the ground. And one of the big problems is people they stop networking because they don't like it, because they don't want to have to call people. And they think, well, something's going to work out because I've always found a job in the past, so I'll apply to 10 or 20 jobs. I got a hot flash for you. I've got some numbers for you in a minute that'll show you that's not going to work. What is with this online stuff? It's the crack cocaine of career management. Okay, now let's talk about that line I used earlier. What hot is not. And what's hot is not means that there are going to be a lot of jobs out there. But if they're not going to be aligned with if they're not aligned with what you do, if they're not aligned with where you want to go next, don't waste your time. Okay? Now you have to understand there's a big difference between playing a numbers game, just applying for everything that moves, and then using an online applications process strategically. What I'm saying now is I'm not saying you are not to apply for online jobs, but what I'm saying is it needs to be consistent with your career plan. It needs to focus on what you want to accomplish. You don't want to take a job that's not in line with what you're doing now and would be a detour. Now, when you do apply for jobs, this is not a take a break moment. Well, God, I applied for 10 jobs yesterday. I worked hard. I'm going to go play golf. No, keep at it. You got to keep moving. The numbers game is really, really staggering. Here they are. The average time to customize your resume is about an hour and a half if you're doing it right, if it's a complex job. The average number of online applications needed for one offer is somewhere between 75 and 125. Some people have had as many as 150. Some have got lucky at 40, but that's the average. The investment of your time based on that average is about 150 hours. And if you've been making it $175,000 a year, and most executives are making about that or more now, that's about $25,000 of your time. Don't waste your time. Don't waste that kind of value with jobs that you can't possibly get or that you really don't want to do. And because your odds on everything online is about 150 to 1. And even if you have somebody trying to help you, it can be on about 16 to 1. And most people wouldn't use those odds to bet on a horse under any circumstances. So you stop chasing jobs that you might be able to do. Oh, something might work out, but that you probably won't get, and if you do, will not add any value to your career. This something may work out is just BS. You're justifying wasting your time, your valuable time on a job that's probably just going to put you into a detour. Now, detours are really important. Sometimes you have to take a detour off your career path to take a job to take care of your family or to pay your bills. But there's more risk than inconvenience in that strategy. Why? Because it's impossible to determine how long a detour will last. It's also impossible to determine whether the market will improve significantly enough for you to recover to get back into the main lane of where you want to go. I've run into people that regrettably, they thought they were taking just a detour for maybe 1 or 2 years until the market improved, and they found themselves in a lower level position, stuck for about 5 or 6 years. You have to be careful about making those kinds of decisions in today's market. Now, one of the things even if you've been so successful, I'm not. I feel compelled to tell this because I'm in this market all the time. I'm seeing I'm seeing the havoc. I'm seeing the unbelievable carnage that occurs to people who think they're so great and that they're going to do it the way they've always done it. Okay. Well, let me tell you, you ain't bulletproof. It's a new day, and you have to adapt to the market. What does this all mean? Well, it's going to take more than talent and confidence and a record of success. Believe it or not, that may have worked for you in the past, but let me tell you, today, that won't get it by itself. If you're not doing all of those digital support programs of marketing, of branding, of networking, you're going to find yourself taking a lot longer to find that job, the next better job. You cannot afford to take anything for granted. Just because you've been successful in the past, don't assume that that's going to guarantee success in this job market. You need to go into this being afraid that it's going to be really, really hard and that there's a chance you may not succeed. You need to be that motivated. You need to be afraid that you're going to fail because this is a crappy market and you're going to take a lot longer to find a job, and you're going to go through, you may go through 7, 8, 10 interview processes before you actually get an offer. You have to also, while this is going on, you have to be committed to looking to the future. You have to be alert to how the market is changing. You have to be aware of what implications are going to be for your career, for the companies you might want to lead. So you have to not only go to your quarterly or national meetings, but you need to stay current, not just in your industry developments, but you have to look at the broader economy and the broader technology. I will tell you now that the people I talk to that are really involved in this AI process are telling everyone this is happening faster than most people realize. And within 3 to 5 years, there are some people, credible people, executives, who believe that there are going to be between 5 and 10 million people whose jobs have been replaced. Now, again, as you sit there, you've got to think about your brand. You've got to think about how people see you. So your brand, your career network, the way you tell your story, how you highlight your accomplishments and your strengths, and how you show prospective employers how you're going to solve their problems. This all has to be best in class. It takes work. It takes preparation. You can't just show up and answer questions anymore. There's absolutely no room for cutting corners. I've had more than one executive say, "Don't worry, John, I got this. I know what I'm doing," and then find out they didn't even make the cut to the top 5. It takes grit and resilience. And let me tell you something. Sometimes people who have been very, very successful in the past don't really understand the concept of grit and resilience. You're going to get knocked down. You're going to be turned down. You're going to be lied to. You're going to be ghosted. And you have to keep up and keep moving. This job takes a lot of discipline. There's a lot of risks that you're going to fail. Watch this pole vaulter. He has to depend on that pole. He is upside down. If that pole breaks, he could be seriously injured. He also has to execute flawlessly. He cannot even afford a whisper to touch that bar because it'll probably knock it off the resting spot. So it takes this kind of determination and this kind of precision. It's a very, very, very tough market, and the bar of competition is more intense than ever before. Now, I'd like to tell you about something we're doing to help people who are in this situation, who want to achieve their goals and have a group of people around them to support them, especially when they're down. Online, on-demand, video courses, we have those. They cover all facets of career management. Some people don't really want one-on-one coaching because they think, man, I don't want to admit that I don't understand what I'm doing. Become a member of our community, and you can have access to all of these opportunities. We have twice weekly live stream group coaching sessions with question and answer provisions. Now, the community is just getting started. It's very small, and so we have a great introductory rate, and we hope that you'll think about it. In addition to the live coaching twice a week, the live group coaching, we also have 3 check-in calls per month. Those are 30-minute calls. That's an hour and a half of one-on-one coaching as part of the membership program. That's incredible value. Most coaches are going to charge you anywhere from of $150 to $250 an hour. We also provide, if you want more in-depth one-on-one service week to week, we can provide you with one-on-one video coaching sessions at discounted rates. Again, instead of paying $150 to $175, you can pay $75 per session. And we offer a newsletter subscription, and on Friday afternoon, we try to do something to lift everyone's spirits called Funny Friday Photos, and that's part of the newsletter subscription. This all is available to you now at johngself.com for $49 a month. We've just started rolling this out, so there's not very many members now, but we want to build a vibrant community, and we want you to be part of that. We want you to contribute, and we will support you. One of the things candidates frequently say is that, God, I get so lonely. I get so isolated. I'm so discouraged. I can't keep complaining to my wife. I can't keep complaining to my husband or my partner. There's only so much they can listen to, and you're going to go through a tough time unless you get very, very lucky. And when I say a tough time, I'm talking about months and months of applying for jobs and then sometimes not even hearing back. Well, we will be there for you. I understand the importance of having someone who is enthusiastic and will support you. And so we will be there for you. And if you need an extra call that says, John, I feel lower than hammered whale, you know what? And it's a Saturday afternoon. You text me. If I'm not tied up, I'll be there for you. We will take care of our members. So I hope you will give this some consideration. We're really anxious and excited about building a really great community. Join us to build this community. We'll help you find your next better job, and then we hope that you will then contribute to the community to help others. Now, a quick reminder about our live coaching session next week, Lunch and Learn on Tuesday. Have to deal with a terrible market, but you have to deal with the age discrimination issue and the white-collar recession. We understand that, and we can help you navigate those challenges. I want to thank you for joining us today. We appreciate your interest in what we're doing, and we hope this information we shared with you today is beneficial. I'm not trying to scare you. What I'm trying to do is prepare you honestly for what you're going to experience in the marketplace. I've dealt with dozens of high-level CEOs and senior executives in the last year, and they've all experienced major setbacks in the job search. They've dealt with recruiters who didn't communicate or recruiters who weren't honest about the jobs, and it's really defeating, and somebody described it as soul-crushing, ego-damaging, process. Well, we're here to help you. We've all been through this before, and we can help you get up and get refocused to move forward. Thank you so much for joining us, and I'll be available to answer questions at the end of this stream.